578. We will glorify the King of Kings. We will glorify the Lamb. We will glorify the Lord of Lords, who is the great I am. Lord Jehovah reigns in majesty. We will bow before His throne. We will worship Him in righteousness. We will worship Him alone. He is Lord of heaven, Lord of earth. He is Lord of all who live. He is Lord of the universe. All praise to Him we give. Hallelujah to the King of Kings. Hallelujah to the Lamb. Hallelujah to the Lord of Lords, who is the great I am. Number 15. After this song will be led in prayer and dismissed to our Bible classes. Oh God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. Oh God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. I will seek you in the morning, and I will learn to walk in your ways, and step by step you'll lead me, and I will follow you all of my days. Oh God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. Oh God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. I will seek you in the morning, and I will learn to walk in your ways, and step by step you'll lead me, and I will follow you all of my days, and I will follow you all of my days, and I will follow you all of my days, and step by step you'll lead me, and I will follow you all of my days.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and all its many blessings. We thank you for this time that we have to come here and sing these songs of praise to you and study from your word. We pray as we go into our classes that we'll glean those things that you would have us to know and help us to walk as you would have us to walk, have a stronger faith in you, and be an example to those around us. We ask that you would remember our sick, those of this congregation, and especially those of this community and friends. We know that some are seriously ill, and we'd ask that you would help them and heal them if it be your will. Go with us as we go through this service and on through our lives, and continued blessings as you have, and most of all in the end savings, we pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Hey, ho, neighbors. I know you two, don't I? Okay. What's that? Anita and Madison. Are you readers? Oh, okay. Do we have Pew Bible somewhere? They are teachers? Okay. Forgot to turn in my homework, sorry. So those of you that are new to our assembly, we have been studying the life of Christ this year, and we're in the last week of Christ's life, and we're on lesson 99, so we've had 98 before this. We're in Matthew chapter 24 tonight. I think I liked what we did last week. I liked the idea of us reading all three of the passages. The others don't, on this particular subject, the others don't show as much as Matthew does, I don't think. Maybe they do, and I just missed it. This one's a little bit longer, 15 through 35, 20 verses, so I guess we can reference the others, but mostly it's in Matthew that we're going to look at. I do see a little bit of Mark. There's one passage of Luke. So let's read all of Matthew, and then we'll read the individual verses in the other two books as we get to them. So Matthew chapter 24, verses 15 through 35. Who would like to start us off? Chad, you want to start us off? Let's just start out in the middle at random.
24:15.
Yeah, verse 15. We'll go down your row one way or the other.
Ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand.
Not those are you to flee the mountains with the one who is on the housetop, not go down and take his foot in his house.
Let him which is on the, let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes.
And woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days.
But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath.
For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be.
Unless those days had been cut short, no life would have been saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short.
Then if anyone says to you, Behold, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe him.
For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect.
See, I have told you ahead of time.
So if anyone tells you, there he is, out in the wilderness, do not go out. Or here he is, in the inner rooms, do not believe it.
For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be.
For whosoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together.
Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not be give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven,
Then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory.
And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four
See, they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. Now learn this parable from the fig tree. As soon as its branch becomes tender and sprouts leaves, you know that summer is near.
So likewise ye, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the door.
Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things have been fulfilled.
Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away.
All right, so we'll stop there for now. We should get to the other part of this later on. The clock is gone, so I'll get my phone out here. I have 7:13.
What time is
Yeah, that has 2:40, 2:54.
Don't use that one back there.
No, we'll be here
it? You've done went way
forever.
over time.
Because, what?
You've done went way over time.
Yeah, it's all over. Let's go home. Okay, so, I could set an alarm. Why don't I set an alarm? Unless one of you want to tell me, because I'll forget to look at my clock. I'll set it here, so.
What do you want me to tell you? Stop?
No, because you'll tell me to stop about 30 minutes early. All right, so let's look at this. What we've looked at, this first part of this, often people look at that and they include that in Jesus' second coming. And it's clear as you look through this book, this chapter, that there's some of the destruction of Jerusalem and some of it is in the second coming. And when you look at verse 36 that we haven't gotten to yet, it says, "But of that day and hour no one knows." But see, before this, it's all, these are the signs of this, is that going to come, and this happened, and tribulation, all that stuff. All of that is a determined time that it was going to happen. It wasn't going to be for several years. It wouldn't be until 70 AD that happened, but verse 36, nobody knows when that's going to happen. So that's a distinct difference between the two.
There's three questions in verse 3.
Yeah.
They were for three different periods of time. You know, a lot of those people talk about premillennialism and all this. They include this just as all one reading, but
Right.
it's actually three parts in his answer.
Right. So let's understand also that there's some figurative language in here. And sometimes that gets difficult. So we have to be aware of that. That not, you know, a lot of the stuff that's in the Bible is easy to understand, but sometimes you get to some stuff that's not so easy to understand. And I understand why they wanted me to teach this class, because they knew this was coming, okay? So I'm not going to tell you that I have all the answers, but I am going to tell you that what we're reading so far this evening is going to refer to something that was going to happen in their lifetime. It wasn't going to be something that happened somewhere down the road 1,000 years or more, or whatever it is. So it was going to happen in their lifetime, and it did. The destruction of Jerusalem, except for James, he was killed pretty early on. But except for him, the apostles would see this abomination of desolation happen in their lifetime that was prophesied by Daniel. So let's look at some of the things that we have here. They probably thought they were talking about one event, but we know that he was referring to at least two events, and Fred's saying three events, and he had to describe at least these two. It's one of the most difficult chapters to understand. I'm reading this from from these notes that have been given to us by these folks. It's also one of the most difficult readings and teachings of Jesus, but one reason for that is because it was in apocalyptic language. And some of you think, well, that means end times. No, that's not what that means. What that means is it's revealing language. It's language that needs to be interpreted somehow. The book of Revelation in the Greek language is titled Apocalypse. And it's not talking about end times, it's talking about revelation. That's the reason why in English we read it Revelation, because this is what has been revealed to the Apostle John on the Isle of Patmos when he was there on that island. So Jesus is talking about some things that are in very descriptive, colorful language that not everybody understood. Especially us. Now, they might have understood it better than we do because it was their language. It came out of their Hebrew Bible. And here we are 2,000 years later with English-speaking people trying to translate from Hebrew and Greek. And, well, then they coded in the midst of that. So what do? Well, we do what we can. We look at some of these passages and we'll see if there's some comparison in what we read in Daniel as well as what Jesus says in these verses. So we've read, I guess we needed to continue to verse 41, but we'll get to that momentarily. What we looked at Sunday was a list of false signs that Jesus gave. Here's some things that when you see these things, don't believe these things. And so he started off with that in verses 4 through 14, 13 or 14. And he says that these are things that you will hear and people will say, and the end is not here yet. Don't believe these false prophets. But what Jesus is describing is, here's something you can know that is going to happen, and you will without a doubt know what it is. Do you see the difference in what he's saying? In one place, it's they're deceiving you. In another place is you are going to know. There's obvious contrast between the two passages. Okay? So in verse 15, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads this, let them understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. And one of the questions that we're going to see here is, if this was the second coming of Christ, why would he tell them to flee to the mountains? What's that going to do? If it's the second coming of Christ, it's all over. I mean, it's finished. It's done. The world, in fact, Peter says the world's going to basically be turned inside out. What are you going to do about that when you flee to the mountains? So there's a part of this that's talking about something that's going to be very devastating, but you can flee it. Can anyone flee the second coming of Christ? No, they can't do it. It's not possible. Because he knows where everybody's going to be. He knows where everybody is. It just isn't possible. So, he says flee in verse 16. Let's look at Daniel about this abomination of desolation. Daniel 9:26. Who's next to read? Would be somebody... Oh, it's Mary. Okay. Daniel 9:26. I can't tell you which book that is of the Old Testament. I'd have to go through them all. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, First Kings, Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Psalms, Isaiah, Jeremiah. It's like book 22.
And after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood, and till the end of the war. Desolations are determined.
Okay, so Daniel's talking about. So what's he talking about? There's going to be a war. There's going to be somebody do a lot of damage.
Be some bad times.
Bad times coming. I've been learning. I don't really know what it means. It sounds almost like the second coming of Christ, but it's. I'm learning how to play this song "Bad Moon Rising" on the guitar, and in that particular song, it says bad things are going to happen. And apparently, it was written during a time of civil unrest in our country back in the 60s. I mean, John F. Kennedy had been shot, Martin Luther King Jr. had been shot. Some bad things were going on in Alabama, all sorts of bad things were going on. So he comes up with this "Bad Moon Rising" song, and it becomes pretty popular. I don't think anybody really knew what it meant exactly, other than political unrest. There was going to be a lot of political unrest during this particular time, and war was inevitable. And it's always inevitable, and he talks about that earlier, that there's always going to be wars and rumors of wars. This particular thing is going to be a big deal. And you can protect yourselves from it by fleeing and not grabbing a bag, not getting anything to try to, not going back to the house. Just go, get out of there, go, run as fast as you can, get out of town, go. So it was going to be a bad thing, and they understood that something big was going to happen, and they would save a lot of lives whenever this big deal happened. Anybody have any idea when or what happened in 70 AD?
Yeah, Roman Empire came to quash the Judean unrest. They surrounded the city. They cut them off for, we'll say, a couple of years.
2 or 3 years.
They didn't let any food in. There was a river running under Jerusalem that they could get water. But other than that, some very unspeakable things. According to Josephus, who was a periodic historian at the time, some very unspeakable things happened in that city.
Right. Very devastating. The temple was destroyed. Jerusalem was...
There was not a stone left on another.
Right. Just like Jesus said.
There was a great dispersal, wasn't there, of the Jews? I mean, they went everywhere. They went.
Yeah, in fact...
That's how Jews ended up in Germany and Russia. And
probably so.
Dispersion.
The book of James talks about a dispersion, and the book of Acts mentions that as well. So several years later, it occurs. I don't know if it's the same one or not, but they were dispersed for sure. But so were Christians. They went out everywhere. Let's look at Luke chapter 21, verse 20 next. Read real loud. Did you hear me? Read real loud. Okay, go ahead.
Then let those in Judah flee to the mountains.
Wait, read verse 20.
But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near.
Okay. You need verse 21 as well? No, that's enough. So it's something that they were going to see, and Jerusalem would be surrounded, and they would know. It's pretty obvious. Jesus is saying, you're going to see this. It's not something that was spiritual in this case. It was something very physical that was going to happen. So Daniel said it was going to happen, and Jesus is saying it's going to happen in your lifetime. You're going to see this, and the desolation is near. And when it says its desolation, it's talking about Jerusalem, its desolation is near, Daniel's prophecy was coming to fruition. And so he says, flee. Flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of her depart. Let those who are in the country, let them not enter her. Don't go into Jerusalem. Stay away. Vengeance. Yeah, bad things will happen. It will fall by the edge of the sword, led away captive to all nations, trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. It's bad stuff.
What does your verse 22 say?
I just closed it. Luke 21:22. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled.
Mine says this is for the punishment, the time of punishment.
Okay?
Who's being punished? The Jews?
Could be, probably.
Or Jerusalem as a whole?
Probably so.
It wouldn't be.
Because Jerusalem was an
Christians.
Israelite town. Jerusalem was the Israelites. It was their town. So yeah, if anybody's being punished, it's the Jews.
You remember the parable we studied a few weeks back about the vineyard owner? They treated his servants bad. They beat them.
Sounds a lot like this, doesn't it?
He said, "What shall he do with them?"
And what was the answer?
He shall utterly destroy them.
Utterly destroy them.
I think it's, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And is that what we're reading about here?
It could very well be what we're reading about here.
That's why Jesus said, destroy this house. He was talking about himself.
Yes. And I will raise it up.
In 3:8, I'll raise it up.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a major punishment.
Right. There wasn't going to be any raising this temple.
No, it's going to be destroyed.
Not a stone left on top of another, it said. And I mentioned Sunday that the blocks were huge. I don't have it. I gave the lessons to Leah and Todd. But the length of the blocks that made up the temple were 12 feet tall, 18 feet tall, and 20 feet long or 40 feet long, or whatever. They were huge blocks. You don't just pick one of those up, throw it over your shoulder.
No easy task to move one of them.
No. Took a bunch of people and maybe some good leverage. Probably some good leverage.
I figured there was an earthquake and the other things.
Could have been. But it was going to be bad. And it had to do with the Roman government coming in, surrounding the place and destroying it. Just destroying it. I'm sure they had catapults at that time, and they pulverized everything. They just demolished it. And there wasn't any returning to that. And to cap it all off, I don't know how long it took. I think, was it the 300s? I think it's the 300s. It might have been the 600s. It might have been the 600s when the Islamic people came in and put their rock on top of that, and it's been there ever since. So a lot of things happened since that time. Since Jesus was standing there saying, "Get out of town and don't come back. Don't even look back." Kind of like Sodom and Gomorrah. Don't look back. Just leave, flee. Don't go pack a bag. It's too late for that. What do they call that in the military? What do they call that in the military?
Bug out.
A bug out bag. Get your bug out bag. You better have it on you whenever this happens, because you don't go back to get your bug out bag. It's too late.
If you read Josephus, which he was a Jewish man, he described Christ, he's a historian at that time. It's almost, you can't imagine what it was like inside that Jerusalem. I mean, they were eating cannibalism, everything was going on, and I mean, you can imagine, how bad it was. He described the blood was up to the bits of the horses when they went in there. Of course, I figured, figurative language like, but it was a terrible sight.
They were starving. A donkey head brought big money.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of thing had happened before.
That was warfare back in not that time.
Sieges happen quite frequently. That's how they took over a town.
I wonder about that verse 28. I always was thinking, my time, them Romans had their standard with the eagles.
Mm-hmm.
They carried
Right.
before their armies, and that's, I always put that in the fist. I might, like I say, it's figured in language a lot of it.
Right.
Kind of what I was thinking. When they see that, they need to get out of there. Once they were circled in, it was over with.
Right. The way it's describing verse 28 is there are dead things all over the place, and that's when eagles and scavenger birds circle over. And apparently the eagle is one of those scavenger birds, and that's what they're going to do as well.
Andy,
yes.
there was I think this number's in question, but I think Josephus might have put the number at about 1 million people.
That died?
Yeah, it's somewhere along in there. I think it's...
That's a large number in that day.
It's a lot, and they're questioning that number, but just to let's say it were a quarter of that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of folks.
It is.
I mean, that's a lot. We hadn't lost that many soldiers in several wars.
Well, in World War II, there were 11 million, apparently. 6 million Jews that were killed, and then 5 million others that died in that. That's a lot of people. But our population in World War II was so much greater than the population of the people at that time. That was a big chunk of the population of Earth.
Well, and it wasn't a war. It was non-combatants. It was like somebody surrounding Paragould, and that happening over a course of 1.5 years or 2 years. So it's not like there's armies fighting here.
Right. Nobody going in and out, and no food going in and out.
No, and right before this, I think Jesus is given the woes, and he says, "Hey, you would not, therefore your house is left to you desolate." So and that means nothing's there.
Right.
You're not there. It's gonna be bad deals.
Right. Okay, it says here that around 70 AD, Titus decided to overrun the city. They got there in about 68, late 60s anyway, whenever it was, late 60s. And then about 70 AD, Titus decided to overrun the city. Joseph said they killed about 1.1 million people, but most feel this number is exaggerated. So I don't know if it's exaggerated or not. I just know however many thousands it was, hundreds of thousands it was, that's still a lot of people that were killed. And he also took captive about 97,000 people. They destroyed and burned the city, they destroyed the temple, and today archaeologists have only been able to identify one stone and part of another one. Only a few walls remain from the city that Jesus inhabited. He also discussed false Christs. Verse 27 says, "For as lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be." So what is that referring to? We're still in the destruction of Jerusalem, so what does that refer to? If you have lightning striking from the east to the west, what does that mean? Something like that. Our insurance companies use the phrase that this is covered except for acts of God. Or maybe that's the only ones that it covers, I don't know. But they use that phrase, acts of God. And what they're referring to is maybe a tornado comes through, or maybe a hurricane comes through, or maybe a gigantic flood. Now in that case, you'd have to have flood insurance. So anyway, there's lots of ifs, ands, and buts in insurance, but act of God is a phrase that's used to describe natural events that, like tsunamis, nobody ever expects these particular things to happen. Earthquake, volcano erupting. I wonder what kind of insurance the people of Pompeii had. probably it didn't matter, did it? Because even the insurance people at that point were, they didn't exist at all anyway. But they would have been covered in volcanic ash as well. So those are called acts of God. And here's an act of God, lightning flashing from east to west, and most people don't see it coming. But Jesus is saying, whenever this Roman government surrounds Jerusalem, you know, don't even look back, don't go back to get your coat. And if just pray that you're not taking with you pregnant ladies, and that it's not on the Sabbath day. Why would it be important for it not to be on the Sabbath day?
Gates are closed on the Sabbath.
They're not going to go anywhere on the Sabbath, right? They're not allowed to walk anywhere more than, what, 3/4 of a mile on the Sabbath? At least the Jews weren't. But a lot of bad things could happen to people that are sitting ducks, right? So, pregnant ladies are not going to be able to move very quickly to get out of town. And he says, don't go back and get your coat. Forget your coat, leave it. Your life is more important than your coat. Go, just get out of there. So obviously the things that he's referring to refer to the destruction of Jerusalem, not the second coming, because none of that stuff would matter. And all of these things that he's describing, when you see, let me ask you this, Clint, you remember when that tornado came through and you said you saw it go right by your house?
Yeah.
I saw it develop out there at the farm. And it headed toward Paragould. And I got in my truck and I followed it into town until it dissipated. But how many people saw that thing? How many of you here saw that tornado that day? Just the 4 of us, 5 of us? I'm surprised. I know you saw it on television. But see, that's an illustration of something that is so big that nobody can miss it. Nobody can miss it. So this lightning that strikes from the east to the west is a huge lightning strike. Did you see that lightning last night? Well, how could you miss it? It may be 20 miles away, but you can still see it because it's so bright, so big, and it covers the sky. You can't miss it. And nobody's going to miss this event. It's going to be so big and so devastating. Nobody's going to miss it.
I read that one. I didn't get that out of that.
What'd you get out of it?
I got the sun coming up to the east and going down to the west. That's where the sun ends.
Well, it does. The sun does come up in the east.
I was in flash of lightning.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why.
You don't have flash of lightning?
Yeah, it said lightning.
Oh, okay.
I don't see how that.
Well, you can't miss the sun either.
Well, no, you see it.
You're going to see it. Now, there was one day when people didn't see it, and they got scared, and a lot of people got religious that day because they thought the sun wasn't going to rise. And this is over on the East Coast in the United States, but the sky was covered with soot from a volcano that happened over in Asia. And it covered the sky all the way over here, and people started praying because they didn't know. I mean, it was pitch black out. All the stars were blocked out, the sun was blocked out, the moon was blocked, everything was blocked out, and they got religious because of the fact that they didn't know if the earth was coming to an end or what. And that's what happens a lot of times. When World War II started, it was so big, nobody missed that one. Nobody missed that war. Everybody knew that the world was in conflict, and there wasn't any ease anywhere. And lots of people died. Nobody missed that event. And this war was going to be that bad. Nobody was going to miss it.
They had time to get out because an army back then didn't move like one today. You knew that thing was coming. You didn't have reports that they're coming. Well, if you remember what Jesus was telling you here, you had time to get out.
Right. When you saw troops lining up to come in to get in formation around the city,
You knew they was coming.
get out.
Days ahead of time.
Yes.
They was coming.
Yeah, it didn't just happen accidentally, or they didn't just accidentally fall into place and, oops, we got surrounded and we didn't pay attention. No, that didn't happen like that. So when they were told, get out as fast as they could. Now then, when we start looking at the second coming of Christ, well, I still have something else to say. What?
On verse 27.
Yes?
You know, it's not talking about the second
No.
coming of Christ, but
No.
it says there, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be.
Right.
That's what's confusing me.
Is it just saying he's gonna be a flash?
Well, that gives you evidence that it's not talking about the second coming.
He ain't gonna be able to go.
This is a big event, just like the second coming is going to be. So it's not the second coming yet.
I'm not saying that, I'm just saying, it says he's gonna come just like the lightning, it's just gonna be a flash.
Well, there are things that say that too, that you don't expect him to come and then it happens and he comes. This is something that they're expecting. So that's a difference between the coming of Christ, and he does describe that. This is something that they're going to know is going to happen. The coming of Christ is something they're not going to know is going to happen.
Hey, Andy,
So there's big difference between the two big events. Yes.
is he contrasting 27 and 27 with 26, where people are putting out hearsay that here's the Son of Man, there's the Son of Man, and he's kind of saying,
That's not the Son of Man.
You're going to know when the Son of Man. Don't
Right.
worry, you're going to see it.
Yeah, you're going to see it.
It's not going to be a mystery that
Yeah.
the Son of Man is coming.
Right.
That's kind of the way I read that.
Right.
And we'll read later on, there's not gonna be, you're not gonna see any sign that's coming.
Right.
It's gonna be,
Right.
you least expect it.
Right. But this abomination of desolation is different.
Yeah, you're gonna have.
You're
some.
going to see it coming.
That's what we've been talking about.
Yes.
You're gonna, all these things are gonna be before.
Right.
So you know it's coming.
Right. Matthew 24. Matthew 24. It's in Luke too. I mean, as well. It's also in Luke.
And look,
But-
it actually says at that time they will see the Son of Man
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
That's talking about the second.
Well, they'll see him in the clouds.
Yeah.
But then it's too late.
Yeah.
Right, there's nothing leading up to that.
No. It's like the lightning.
Yeah, and you'll know it, no, you're not gonna doubt.
You're going to know that it's happening, but for Jesus to come a second time, there's no turning back at that point. It's over. With this big battle, you can flee someplace. With Jesus coming in, you can't flee any place.
Does not history record most of the Christians made it out because of this one, because Christ.
In fact, what I've heard, and I don't know all this, I'm just saying what I've heard about that is that not a single Christian was killed or was suffering.
They listened.
They listened to Jesus.
And did.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. So we've said all in the past couple of minutes basically everything we needed to say about this whole thing. Because it talks about there's a difference between one and the other. And we've pretty much covered them all just right then and there. So you can read verses 29 to 31 are still referring to
What was,
let's see, maybe not.
29 through 30, let's talk about the coming of the Son of Man.
Maybe. Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm wondering what they were describing, because this is saying, oh, okay, if it does not refer to the second coming, then he was simply talking about his coming judgment, the destruction of Jerusalem. Because it could be an apocalyptic language, but which makes it harder to understand. But once you get to verse 36, there is no doubt that he's talking about the second coming of Christ. Whereas before that, it's kind of unclear. You're not sure which one he's talking about. Both of them are big events, but here's some differences. One difference is you're going to see this destruction of Jerusalem coming. You're not going to know it when Jesus comes again. He says this to his disciples. He says, not even the Son of Man knows when I'm going to come. So it's not going to be known.
It says in verse 34, this generation here is going to see all that.
Yes.
It's not going to.
Right.
Shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled.
Right.
So, anything before
Right,
that.
verse 34, right. Right,
Talking
so,
about destruction of Jerusalem or.
right, even though it sounds like the second coming in verses 29 to 31, it's probably still talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. Because Jesus is the one that's giving the judgment on Jerusalem at that point. And he said, I'm going to come and destroy them. He said it. Remember? He said, they won't respect my son, I'm going to destroy them. In that story you were talking about. So it's because of the figurative language, it makes it more difficult. But when you get to 36, there isn't any doubt about it. But of that day and hour, referring to the time when Jesus is coming, nobody's going to know. But what about the destruction of Jerusalem? Everybody's going to know it. There's not going to be anybody miss it. It's going to be seen coming. If you pay attention, you can get out of here safely. Yes?
In Luke 21, verse 24, it says, Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles
Right.
until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled.
Right.
What's that mean?
Probably referring to the destruction of Rome, which happened a couple of centuries later. Not much longer than that. Third
So the
century.
Gentiles
Third
are
century is
Rome?
when they were destroyed.
Huh?
When was Rome destroyed? Was that third century? Something in there.
Turned Christian around
People
300,
went
didn't
there
it?
all the time.
Yeah.
You know, till-
Yeah. So until it was going to be like that until Rome was destroyed or the Gentiles were destroyed. And Revelation also talks about that idea, Babylon, talking about it being Babylon. And of course the Romans didn't know that it was talking about them, but there's a lot of interchangeable stuff in here that we're not going to be able to talk about because somebody set the clock and now I know that it's time to quit. So thank you all for your comments. It's been interesting. It's confusing.
Jesus said, "What I'm about to tell you is true. You need to change and become like little children. If you don't, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven."
All right. So obviously this is a little outside the norm of what we come to expect, but by the way, thanks, Ezra. Good job, dude. The topic, as you can see from what he's just got done reading to us, become like children, right? So he's not just a prop up here. The few weeks ago, last month sometime, we were in the Sunday morning class, and I posed a gotcha question to that class, and I asked the example, like, who has the greatest faith? Who do y'all know that has the greatest faith? Like, name somebody. It could be somebody from this church. It could be somebody from history, whatever. Different answers came about. And the reason I say it's a gotcha question is because I said my kids. A little story I told that day was we had been getting haircuts. We all go to the same place. And Lauren was getting hers, and Noah was sitting over there with me. Blakely sitting over there. They're getting restless. And
Yeah.
and I said something to him, and he replied back that he wished it would hurry up, or he said something would hurry up. And I said, "You talking about Mom?" He said, "Do you remember this?"
What?
It's been a while. He said that he wished Jesus would hurry up and come back because he's ready to go to heaven. Man, you can't beat that, okay? And so I got to thinking, like, next time I get up here, we'd like to do some kind of faith like a child deal. And
Yeah.
I could explain faith like a child the best I could, right? But I thought it'd be better just to have him up here talk. We talk all the time. Why not talk up here for a minute? By the way, if I get fired because I broke some rule, I didn't ask permission, I'm going to be asking forgiveness later. At least I'm going out with a bang because I won't forget this for a while. I appreciate
Funny.
So, I get nervous every time I come up here. I get stage fright. I got to prep, and I got to amp myself up for it. There's none of that going on here, right? But, all right, so I told him I was going to ask him some questions. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So, first of all, you know who created the world? Who created Earth?
God.
I'm talking to that.
God?
Yeah. And how did it get made? You can tell them. What do you know about how it got made?
God created it?
Huh?
God created it?
God created it's what he said. Yeah, you can talk into this. Make sure everybody in the back can hear you.
God created it?
There you go. All right. And how long did it take?
6 days.
Yeah. What about, let's see, y'all been learning this in children's church. What about Moses? When God talked to him, how did he talk to him? How did God talk to Moses? He wants me to tell y'all that he said to go to Egypt and tell Pharaoh to let my people go.
Yeah?
All right. And did Pharaoh let them go?
No.
Blakely knows
No.
too. And did they end up getting away?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
All right. And when they got to the river, what happened? Tell them. Talk right here. Okay. Somebody opened up the river so they could walk across on dry, and then when the Egyptians crossed, somebody closed it. So who was that did that?
God?
And you believe all that?
Yes.
Like, that, if you wanted to rationalize God creating the world in 6 days, Moses getting talked to, we never said how he got talked to.
Mm-mm.
What was it? How did God talk to him? I know you know.
Yeah, you did.
All right. Burning bush, yeah. Right?
Oh, yeah. Burning bush.
Yeah. So, anyways, God talks to somebody through a burning bush. Thousands of years ago, we read about it in what we call the Bible. He saves an entire, basically, race of people from slavery, brings them out, takes them across the river on dry land. Just as the capturers that are chasing them come across, the river closes. And we believe all that? Like, it's hard to believe, right? Not for him. He believes it all the way through, just like we should.
No, it's easy.
It's easy, yeah. It's that easy because we believe in God. So what about Jesus? Do you believe that he's the Son of God?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And do you know why he came to earth? Why did Jesus come to earth?
I'm going to tell you.
Tell them.
No.
Okay.
I
want you to say it. I didn't understand you. To take away what?
People to go to heaven.
To-
That was good.
To take the good people to heaven is what he said. Not a bad summarization of that, right?
Yeah.
He wants the believers to go with him to heaven and live forever. That's maybe better than what I would have said. At least fewer words, easier to tell somebody that you find on the street why you believe. And so, are you...
Back to questions.
So when we're at home, we like to do Bible stories. We try to make them fun, the whole thing.
Yeah?
And we also pray together. So when we pray, who do you pray for? Or what do you pray for?
A lot of things.
A lot of things. What are some?
For our enemies to be good and love Jesus and God.
For our enemies to be good and learn to love Jesus and God.
Yeah.
How many times throughout your day does somebody that you classify as your enemy come across your prayer list, right? Like,
And that loves God and Jesus.
and to love God and Jesus. There's a reason that what Ezra read a second ago is what Jesus told the people. There's also a reason that 3 verses later, he says that if anybody becomes a blockade to those kids, teaches them the wrong thing, basically is what we can interpret, stands in the way of them seeking their redemption, learning about God. Anybody stands in the way, it's better to have a millstone hung around their neck and dropped in the depths of the sea. There's a reason for that.
What?
All right. We're almost to the end, obviously, because we're running short on attention, possibly. But the reason for that, I'll ask you, why do you believe all the stuff that you believe in the Bible?
Because it's true.
Can you read?
Some words.
Some words, yeah. He's learned to read. He didn't read all that in the Bible himself. He was taught that by people here. A lot of the people here are the reason he knows the things he knows about that. And if somebody here had decided one day they wanted to do the work of Satan rather than the work of God and teach them the wrong things, unfortunately, his faith would make him believe that is also just as true, because that faith is not fully developed. We are supposed to have faith like a child. We know that. But we're not supposed to stop there. So when we do those Bible stories together, we're planting seeds that are going to continue to grow. But they're going to
in our garden.
In our garden. Yeah. So they're going to continue to grow. And I really hope with all my heart, we pray for this. these kids, not just my two, all of them, grow up to be better Christians than I ever thought about being. I hope that him and everybody else
Oh, man.
learn everything that God wants them to know. And I hope they fulfill that, and I hope they share it with the next generation. But we should have faith like a child for the reasons that you're seeing right here. This demonstration was better than what I would have described myself if I got up here and tried to talk. But it's not the end of this description. He's got to keep going.
No, it's not.
He's got to keep going in his life. We got to keep going in our life. We have a lot to learn. We have a lot more to learn. And we have a lot more to do, because the faith that we have as a child, although it should be emulated in the way that Jesus said that it should, if we could become like the least of the children, we'll be the greatest in heaven. That doesn't mean that we should decide what we know when we're 4 or 5 is enough to carry us the rest of the way. There's more work to be done there. So I'll ask you this, and we're real close to being done now. You remember when Mr. Michael was here? What did he say the most important thing was?
To be a Christian.
Yep, to be a Christian. And to marry a Christian, yeah.
Yeah.
And so...
yeah.
So, do you know how to become a Christian, Noah?
To marry a Christian.
I got you. It's okay if you don't.
I'm going to say it to you.
Okay, he says it's to be good to God.
Yeah.
We know that's part of the way. That's an important step, but there's more. And one of the things that we're told in the Bible is that we need to be baptized into Christ. Now, I know he doesn't know everything there is to know about baptism. The other day, I asked him, it's been a little bit, but he had questions about baptism, just like a lot of other kids do. They see what we do during the communion. And the easiest way to describe why he doesn't partake in that so far, as I've told him, is because he's not baptized. And he told me he thought the way that if he could get prepared to be baptized, he's not using these words obviously, but he said the reason he can't get baptized yet is because he can't sit still during church yet. That's what he thinks is his holdup, okay?
Yeah.
So he obviously is not ready. His mind is not developed enough. He has not gone through the stages of life.
Are you kidding?
All right, buddy. To get to that point, to be baptized, he'll know when he's ready. A couple months ago, in this Wednesday,
yes, I will.
Hold on, buddy. In the Wednesday night class, Chris was in there, and Dash was in there, and I told them they'll know when they're ready to be baptized. They should be receptive to those thoughts. You know, they're getting close to the age when they will know. And when it's time, there's going to be no denial. For us adults, the time, I think, Andy, you said this Sunday, didn't you? The time is now. If you believe in God, if you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, you believe he came to earth, as he said, to bring the good people to heaven, if he died for our sins, the time is now to get baptized. And if you know that, there's no better time than right now. So we're about to be led in a song. That's this little feller's lesson on faith like a child. And I appreciate y'all letting us do this tonight. If you're willing to be baptized tonight, if you have a need that the church can help you with, please let it be known as together we stand and sing.
Hark the gentle voice of Jesus falleth tenderly upon your ear. Sweet his cry of love and pity calleth. Turn and listen, stay and hear. Ye that labor and are heavy laden,
I want to thank each of you for your attendance tonight. Greatly appreciated. And our online viewers and also for our visitors tonight. There's some forms in the back of the foyer on the table. It's for the ladies to select the Lady of the Year here at Liberty. And so if you would pick one of those up and make a selection that you want to. And also there's a covered container there that you can put your ballot in. And also there's a sign-up sheet on that table. And so I want you to put your name there and how many guests you will be bringing with you. And I believe that's October the 14th for the ladies' retreat. Also, Amber Hill's taking orders for T-shirts for that event. So if you want T-shirts, see her. If you're planning on attending a fish fry this Saturday, September 24th, you could bring your dessert then. Or if you're not planning on attending, you can bring that dessert by Carolyn Wood's house by 10 a.m. Friday morning, and she'll make sure they get there. And so, also, it's time to turn in coin banks. So if you have a coin bank for the children's home, bring that with you next time you come to the service. Leah received good news today. If you notice, she ain't got a brace on, and so she's happy about that good news there. The fellowship meal this Sunday night. The theme is Mexican. Everyone is invited to bring a dish and stay for that. I want to thank Chad for the song service, and Ezra, Noah, and Matt Rowe for the Devo. Is there anything else?
Those who feel like it, please stand. You are the words and the music. You are the song that I sing. You are the melody. You are the harmony. Praise to your name I will bring. You are the Lord of lords. You are the mighty God. You are the King of all kings. So now I give back to you the song that you gave to me. You are the song that I sing.
Heavenly Father, we pray that you be with each of us now as we go throughout this community and the world. We pray that you be good, shining light to those around us, that others see you living in us, that lead other people to you. Lord, we pray to always look to you, as we pray that our leaders do, this nation, the world, to make the right and godly decisions. Please be with those who fight for and serve this country. Please be with our sick. Lord, please be with us all until we come together again.